Johnson, and I think he has the clearest vision of the future. So I want you to pay attention. I don't care where you live in the world, because I think Brett has as clear a vision of the future as possible.
Essentially, what I think has happened over the last 10 years and what I think is going to happen over the next few years is that the world, after the financial crisis, the central banks just got together and just printed all this liquidity. And that went on for 6 or 7 years, 5 or 6 years. And at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, the US stopped mixing the milkshake and we started raising interest rates. And the raising of the interest rates from 2016 to 2019 combined with a number of other factors. It's not just interest rates, but interest rates were a big factor. And the fact that our interest rates, while they've come down a lot, are still higher than Japan and Europe, who have negative rates, that along with these other factors of having the global reserve currency system, having the dollar payment system, having the largest US military, having the deepest capital markets, all of that stuff acts as a straw which sucks up all the liquidity that the world is printing. At the end of the day, whether you like the dollar or whether you hate the dollar, whether you think it's a good currency or a horrible currency, the fact of the matter is it is the currency which the world runs on. And so even if you hate the dollar, if you live in Argentina or Turkey or China or Brazil or France, you still need dollars to operate on the world stage. Now, I think there's a lot of people who would like to change that, but as of right now, they haven't. And I think the efforts that they have made to do so are too little too late.
If they're printing so many dollars, why doesn't gold take? Why don't people just rush to gold? And I think that's the question you were asking. It's a question I'm asking myself, is if there's so many fiat or I call fake dollars, why doesn't gold go through the roof? Right?
Yeah. Again, I think it depends on where you're at and what currency you're denominated in. Like gold in Argentinian pesos looks really good right now. Gold in Turkish lira looks really good. Gold in just about every currency other than the dollar is at its all-time high. And it's getting pretty close to itself in the dollar as being the all-time high as well. Still a couple $100 away. In many ways, people think of the gold and the dollar as enemies or the antithesis of each other. I do think that we'll get into a period where they rise together, but I think ultimately gold will win the battle. The reason is because I think gold is the market's money. If we just had free markets and there was no government influence and central banks and legal tender laws, then I think the market would choose gold as money. But we don't live in a free market. We may want to, but we don't. And because of the governments of the world, and not just US, don't want a gold standard because they like to be able to spend more than they earn. Politicians get elected by making promises. And so I don't think the governments of the world want to go back to a gold standard. I think the market might force it on them, but they will fight it. And in that fight, I think that's where gold gets tampered down from time to time. I'd say that the main difference pre-corona and post-corona, from my point of view, is the extent to which the United States is going to help mix the milkshake going forward. Before, I thought that we might mix it a little bit and the rest of the world would continue to mix it a lot and we would suck it in. Well, now I think they're mixing it with them, but I still think for a number of reasons, the US is going to be the primary recipient of sucking in all that milkshake, all that liquidity that the rest of the world is, and that we are now printing, or the liquidity that we're putting into the market.
So the world's printing money, but that's going to flow to the U.S. is what you're saying.
Exactly. And as that capital comes into the U.S., I don't just think it sits in cash. I think it gets put into places that yield a little bit more than cash. Maybe it goes into Coca-Cola. Maybe it goes into IBM. Maybe it goes into Electronic Arts or Microsoft. Some of these companies that have some growth potential that maybe pay a dividend. And think about it, it really depends on where you're sitting on how this works out. If you're sitting in Argentina and you have some excess savings and you can put it in the dollar and the Argentinian peso goes down 10%, you've just made 10%. But if you also put it in Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola pays you a 3 or 4% dividend, now you've made 13%. And if Coca-Cola happens to go up 6%, now you've made 20%. So now you don't get that same thing if you're in the United States because the dollar is your currency. But my point is that whether you like it or not, the biggest demand for currency out there is the demand for the dollar. And despite the fact that they're printing a lot of it, the demand for it dwarfs the supply.
And the reason for that is much of the world's debt is also denominated in dollars. So they have to pay back the debt in dollars.
Absolutely. Everybody knows that the U.S. is 24, 23, 25 trillion dollars in the debt. But what a lot of people don't know is that the rest of the world has an equivalent amount of debt, But if you actually drill down into corporates and some other, the shadow banking system, it's probably 20.
Nevjerojatna stvar. Zašto se onda potpisuje 14067? Pogledajte video. Da se stvori ta jedna digitalna valuta. Šta se dešava sad u Americi? Zašto nijedna država ne želi da se odrekne svoje valute? Zašto je u Hrvatskoj malo te ne izbio haos kad kuna prelazi u euro, ne u dolar? Zato što dolar poprilično postaje nesiguran. Htio bi sam nešto da pročitam, samo. Dolar će zaista da eksplodira. Zašto? Zato što jednostavno će pojest samog sebe. Pojest će samog sebe, jednostavno ne može više. I sad se prave, znači, organizacije poput Zcash-a, ko što je bio sa Snowdenom, pa su zabranili video, da se ne zna za to, gdje će bogati da ulažu, pa će se praviti organizacije poput ovo, kako se zove, razne, znači, kriptovalute koje će pokušavati da pomjere taj zlatni standard, gdje on više i u suštini ne postoji. Covid je napravio krizu svjetsku, međutim, dolar je pojeo sam sebe, štampo da više nije imao gdje da se ulaže. Počeo da se ulaže samo po Americi. Jer više ne znate zašto je zato keš postao popularan, jer keš uglavnom ima zlatni standard. Dok s digitalne valute niste sigurni šta se dešavaju. I sad se pokušavaju zaštititi, razumijete? Dešava se sljedeći najveći krah u istoriji, predstoji najveći krah u svjetskoj istoriji, to će biti zbog najveće financijske sile na financijskim tržištima. Svaka transakcija zahtijeva kupca i prodavca. Jedini faktor razlikovanja po cijeni te se transakcija odvija. Robert Kiyosaki je nedavno tweetovao: najbolje vrijeme za pripremu za sudar je prije sudara. Sljedeći najveći krah u svjetskoj istoriji. Dobra vijest je najbolje vrijeme za bogaćenje tokom kraha. Loša vijest je da će sljedeći pad biti dug. Očekuje nas jedan veliki dugi pad, jedan veliki dugi financijski haos. Vi sad imate države koje imaju jake valute, jen se nikad nije dao. Vidite, turska lira jaka, energetijski pesos, tek sam na ovom videu čuo da uopšte postoji da je jak tako. Amerika će svojom silom htjeti da zadrže dolar, da bude vodeći svjetski, i svojom silom će htjeti da euro bude nekako počinjen dolaru, međutim to im neće uspjeti. Zato je moguće da i Rusi su sa rubljom htjeli da naprave iskok, međutim ono što se radi u Ukrajini ih ne opravdava s time, moglo se to i na drugi način. Njemci plaću za svojom markom koju su dali nama u Bosni i koja je jako, mogu vam reći, stabilna, KM. Znači, jedna, može se reći, najstabilnijih valuta, iako je, ajmo reći, nepostojeća. Znači, dobili smo je, čisto da imamo, a možete s njom sve, možete s njom kupiti i dolar, i euro, i bilo šta, znači s KM-om, koji je možda ne posuđen od njemačkog standarda. Šta se sad dešava? Tokom protekle decenije, brojni pojedinci 2008. išli su u keš prije nesreće. U tom trenutku osjetili su sigurno svoje postupke, međutim to pouzdanje je ustupilo mjesto pristrasnosti potvrde nakon što je tržište doseglo dno 2009. Mi dno ćemo dosegnuti, ja mislim, 2023. Iz tog dna onda počinje jedno dizanje sa jakom i čvrstom valutom ili s jakim i čvrstim valutama kao što je prije bilo. Da svaka zemlja malte ne ima svoju valutu ili par zemalja kao što je euro. Nije loše, recimo, da ima svaki svoje. Vi imate, Hrvatska ima, postavila je Teslu, ne znam šta. Znači, imate euro, ali da nije počinjen dolarom. A oni su htjeli da sve počinje dolarom. I time može Amerika sama sebe da izjede. Znači, sve je rečeno maltene u ovom videu i u videu 14067. Zašto? Međutim, ono što mene brine je zašto su zabranili video sa Snowdenom i taj Zcash. Zašto mogu samo bogataši da ga kupuju? o tome ćemo još raditi, nastavit ćemo da ne bude ovaj video gdje je prilično pojak i treba ga malo više razumjeti, pogotovo ko se ne razumije u financije, a i ja sam jedan od tih. Međutim, razumijem ono što je poruka, jer sam više puta pogledao video i video je zaista jak i dobar i dobra poruka, znači pripremite se za jedan veliki krah, a već ga počinjete osjećati. Znači, Europa najviše osjeća, a u suštini Europa bi trebala najmanje da osjeća, jer bi trebala uvijek bude vodeća u nekim i u mnogim stvarima što se tiče kulture i svega. Međutim, eto, nametnuli su nam to i mislim da će Amerika baš moguće da ovako propadne. Jedino Hitler što ima dobru stvar kad je rekao Coca-Cola ne može, Coca-Cola može Fanta. Eto. Tako i trebaju ostale stvari. Ne možete vi svoje naturat. Neću Adidas, hoću da se zove tako i tako. Mehodas. Neću Nike, hoću Pike. I jednostavno mijenja tržište. Znači, da kineska djeca ne rade više ono što rade i da se pomjere neke stvari. Ali eto, mi jednostavno smo postali hipnotisani, izgleda jedna velika hipnotisana odgovornost, Vidimo se, izvinjamo se na ovome, jer radimo 2 videa, radimo puno, zaista punom parom i nadam se da će se sve uspjeti uploadovati. Ćao!